Today, I want to make a prediction, a very specific, concrete prediction about what this world looks like when the current fire burns out. I am not going to give you a vague statement about the global order changing. I am going to make a specific claim. When this war ends, 5 specific countries will no longer exist in their current form. Now, listen carefully. I am not talking about countries being completely erased from the map. I am not talking about the ground disappearing. I am talking about something much more subtle and much more dangerous. I am talking about countries whose internal reality, their governments, their borders, their economies, and their social contracts will be so fundamentally broken and rebuilt that calling them by their old names will be a lie. The name on the map will remain the same, but the reality will be entirely different. Before we name these 5 countries, you need one piece of history. You must understand how this board was built. The year is 1916, the middle of the First World War. 2 men representing the British and French empires sat in a room with a map of the Middle East. They took a pen and a ruler and they drew lines in the sand. This was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. They drew these lines without caring about the people who lived there. They drew a box and called it Iraq, trapping Sunni, Shia, and Kurdish tribes together. They drew another box and called it Syria. They drew Lebanon to balance Christian and Muslim populations artificially. My friends, for 110 years, the world has been forced to live with those artificial lines. But artificial borders are like a rubber band pulled too tight. Eventually, under enough pressure, they snap. The pressures of this current war are snapping the rubber band. Let us look at the 5 countries that will not survive the snap. Country number 1 is Lebanon. Lebanon is not waiting for this war to break it. Lebanon was already a failed state, walking like a ghost before the first shot was fired. Let us look at the brutal math. Before this conflict escalated, the Lebanese currency had lost 90% of its value in less than 3 years. The national electricity grid works for perhaps 4 hours a day. The banking system completely collapsed in 2019, permanently locking citizens out of their life savings. Lebanon was a state held hostage by a massive non-state army, Hezbollah. Hezbollah was stronger than the actual national military. But look at what this war is doing. This war is systematically hunting Hezbollah's leadership. It is bombing their weapon stockpiles. It is cutting their financial supply lines from Iran. Here is the most dangerous question in geopolitics. What happens when the only group with real power can no longer deliver security or services to its people? The people ask, was it worth it? Was tying ourselves to Iran worth the destruction of our country? When that question is asked, the political arrangement of Lebanon is finished. The vacuum left behind will not be filled by a beautiful democracy. It will be filled by foreign powers. France, Saudi Arabia, and the West will have to step in and manage the ruins. Lebanon will still be called Lebanon, but it will be a ward of the international community. Country number 2 is Yemen. Yemen is the clearest case of a country that has already ceased to exist. This war is simply going to make it official. Imagine you drop a mirror on the floor. It shatters into 3 large pieces. You can put a frame around those pieces and say, look, it is a whole mirror. But it is a lie. Yemen is a broken mirror. Since 2015, Yemen has been divided into 3 distinct zones. The Houthi-controlled north, backed by Iran. The internationally recognized government in the south, backed by Saudi Arabia. The Southern Transitional Council, backed by the UAE, who wants total independence. 3 different Yemens. They have their own armies, their own money, and their own foreign bosses. When the United States and its allies drop heavy bombs on Houthi targets to protect Red Sea shipping, what actually happens? Does it destroy the Houthis? No. It makes them stronger at home. It gives them legitimacy. They stand up and say, we are the only ones brave enough to fight the American giant. You cannot bomb a movement into irrelevance when the people see them as their only defenders. When the dust settles, the fiction of a unified Yemen will be abandoned. It will formalize its partition. It will become 2 or 3 permanent, heavily armed, separate countries. Country number 3 is Iraq. This is the ultimate paradox. It would be funny if it were not so dangerous. Currently, Iraq is like a child living with two divorced parents who hate each other but refuse to leave the house. Iraq is an American ally. It hosts thousands of American troops and massive US military bases. But simultaneously, Iraq is an Iranian client state. It has an Iranian-aligned government and Iranian-backed militias that are more powerful than the Iraqi National Army. For 20 years, America and Iran quietly shared custody of Iraq. They never forced the issue, but this war is ending that quiet arrangement. Every time American forces use Iraqi soil to strike an Iranian proxy, the Iraqi government faces massive boiling anger from its people. The pressure to kick the Americans out is reaching a breaking point. If the American troops are finally forced to pack up their bags and leave, what happens? Nature hates an empty space. Without American military power acting as a heavy counterweight, Iraq tips completely and irreversibly into total Iranian dominance. The Iraq that American blood and treasure spent 20 years trying to build will vanish. It will become a true Iranian satellite state in all but name. Country number 4 is Pakistan. My friends, this is the one that should keep you awake at night, because Pakistan is not just a fragile state. It is a fragile state with over 170 nuclear warheads. Before this war even started, Pakistan was an economic disaster zone. They are trapped in an IMF debt program just to keep the lights on. They are facing a massive internal political crisis with a highly popular former prime minister sitting in prison and a military establishment struggling to keep control of a very angry population. Now, introduce the shock of this Middle East war. Pakistan survives on imported oil from the Gulf. When war threatens the Strait of Hormuz, the price of energy explodes. Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are already completely empty. If oil prices spike, the country shuts down. This is a pressure cooker with the heat turned all the way up and the valves glued shut. Under this incredible economic and political gravity, the institutional balance of Pakistan will shift violently. Will the military seize total, open control to secure the nuclear weapons? Will the state fracture under the weight of riots and poverty? The Pakistan that survives this energy shock will be governed by entirely different, much harsher rules than the Pakistan of yesterday. My fifth and final slot is not a single country. It is a $2 trillion union, the Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC. Think of the GCC like a gated community for billionaires. For 40 years, this club of wealthy oil nations was held together by two things: a shared business plan and a giant American security guard standing at the front gate. This war proves that the American security guard is losing its strength. America cannot completely stop Iranian proxies. America cannot guarantee that a drone will not hit a Saudi oil facility. America cannot keep the Red Sea totally safe for cargo ships. When the giant shield weakens, the billionaires inside the gated community stop trusting each other. They start buying their own locks. They start making their own side deals. Saudi Arabia will secretly negotiate with Iran to make sure their Vision 2030 cities are not bombed. The UAE will pivot towards China and Russia to protect its status as a safe business hub. Qatar will use its massive gas wealth to play its own diplomatic game. The GCC will not formally dissolve. They will still take group photos, but the unified power of the alliance will evaporate into a ruthless game of every nation for itself. Look closely at all 5 of these examples: Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, Pakistan, the GCC. Do you see the common thread? Every single one of these entities was held together by external pressure. Foreign money, foreign armies, foreign guarantees. They were artificial. This war is removing the external scaffolding, and the buildings are collapsing under their own weight. In geopolitics, change happens in 2 phases: slowly and then all at once. We are in the slow phase right now. The cracks are forming in the foundation. Soon comes the sudden phase. And by the time the news tells you it has happened, the map you learned in school will already be obsolete. Understand the math, watch the board, and don't let the illusion of the map fool you.